I now want to talk about three areas that affect us both from a railway engineering perspective and also from a general construction perspective. And the first one of these is the role of the temporary works coordinator. I hope everybody understands that on every site we have to appoint a temporary works coordinator. This is a legal requirement under the construction regulations. About a year ago at Loughborough we had a visit from HMRI, and they were hot on our tails to ensure that we had appointed temporary works coordinators and that those people who were appointed knew what their roles and responsibilities were and were keeping the necessary records and passing on and ensuring temporary works were treated with the same respect in terms of design and construction as the permanent works. You'll find that included in the briefing pack there is an 11-page handout entitled The Management of Temporary Works in the Construction Industry. This has been prepared by the HSE, and it was a document that they let us have after the initial visit we had at Loughborough about a year ago. The theme to it is that, quite simply, that there are far too many incidents and accidents, near misses, prohibition notices coming out of the whole of the temporary works scenario. There is certainly emphasis coming from Network Rail on the importance of temporary works. I have recently been to a workshop at Westwood where temporary works was a major part of an agenda and one of the sessions, and indeed one of the senior program engineering managers in Network Rail has been charged with producing what Network Rail and the contractors forum that attends these sessions with them, what they think is the best practice to put forward. So I would recommend that if you don't already take temporary work seriously, then you need to. So the first thing is to ensure that a temporary works coordinator is appointed on each project. This ideally needs to be somebody who is technically very competent. The guidelines from HSE are suggesting that the person who is appointed has already had experience of temporary works, has completed some formal training in temporary works, and has a degree or HND in civil engineering, and is also a chartered civil or structural engineer. Now, for Spencers, we are going to struggle a little with the chartered engineer side of it. It is therefore possible that what we will have to do is, on some of the smaller sites, we will have to have a temporary works coordinator who is there on a visiting basis. But it will be his job to ensure that all the procedures are in place, and that will need a high level of cooperation from the site team. So that's the first thing, that's the appointment of a temporary works coordinator, and that appointment needs to be recorded so that the person who has been appointed is clear about his responsibilities, and he will ensure that the temporary works, so the whole of the temporary works on that site, are coordinated through him, and that correct registers showing the state of temporary works and designs are kept. The next item that comes out of this appointment of the Temporary Works Coordinator is the Temporary Works Register, where this needs to, we need to sit down in the same way that we produce the construction phase plan and highlight the works package plans that we're going to produce. We need to do exactly the same thing with temporary works. So from first principles, create a register of anything that is going to be included under the term of temporary works. And for us on the railway, that will be items like excavating in the track support zone, working within 3 meters of the running edge, the use of plant that's within 3 meters of the running edge, the erection of scaffolding, formwork, temporary staging of installations, removal of redundant railway assets, and installation of new railway assets. I think everybody at the moment who is on the list of CREs and CEMs will at some stage have experienced temporary works in the railway environment. Following on from the temporary works register, the next recommendation for good practice is to have a properly formulated design brief. Now, I know within Spencer's we sometimes use our own in-house designers to produce temporary works. We sometimes pass that responsibility on to external scaffolding contractors and ground support system equipment suppliers. That's fine, but on each of those occasions where we're asking somebody to design temporary works, we must first sit down and think through what it is we want them to design and the relevant information that we have on site that we can give to them that will help them with the design. In some cases, there may not be any information, and you may have to commission a borehole investigation or dig trial holes to confirm what ground conditions are. But certainly, in terms of a design brief, you'll have to think about the type of loading that is going to be applied to the temporary works, how long it's going to be there, whether the temporary works are going to be staged, etc. And all that information will have to be put down into a design brief. And once that has been passed on to the designer, he then has opportunity to look at it and ask any questions that he may have. But those questions need to go back to the temporary works coordinator or the person who has produced the brief. The design of temporary works needs to be done by competent designers. The rules are similar to those that we already use for CREs for design. There needs to be experience, demonstrable experience from those people that they have designed temporary works before, and that if they are unsure, they will probably need some form of mentoring. And in any case, the temporary works will require a design check. Following on from the temporary works design, I would recommend that people designers have a look at BS 5975 on false work. I think the current date of that standard is 2008, but it gives you a number of standard solutions that can be used, along with other useful information about design information, wind speed, loading factors, slenderness ratios, all those sorts of things which need to be considered. The design checks are similar to the ones that we get from Network Rail for permanent works and temporary works design checks. Category 0, 1, 2 and 3. Basically anything that is a category 3 is pretty complicated and will require an independent check. That type of design and design check we will probably only find it on some of the work that we do on the major projects. The likes of Waverley Station is probably one point in case where we've had some highly complicated scaffolding to put in, and we've been making holes through existing train shed walls which have needed a fairly high level of design check. Other designs, simple formwork and the like, can be done in-house but by a different member of the team. And just one point on false work for concrete pours, the design will always be related to a rate of height of pour. So if you've got a 5-metre shutter, it's likely that the design has been based on the fact that the rate of filling of that shutter will be in the order of 1.5 metres height per hour. So if you are going to put in 5 metres height in the space of an hour, you can expect a problem. So please understand that. And again, that sort of information should be included in the design brief. We then come on to actually putting temporary works into place. There will be an accepted design that needs to be issued in the normal way by the CRE for construction. The temporary works coordinator is required to ensure that that design is suitable for the purpose, i.e. it fits in with the general method of construction and it can be built. But it's accepted that during the construction of temporary works that some changes may need to be made. These need to be recorded, they need to be passed back to the designers for them to check and endorse the design, and only once that's done can the final design check be done and a permit to load certificate be issued by the temporary works coordinator. And the temporary works coordinator is required to check actually what has gone in. And I'm afraid for those who are appointed as temporary works coordinators, you cannot delegate this responsibility. It is yours and you have to do it. So it will mean that you may have to get out there and have a look at scaffold and check things. Okay, so that gives you a flavour of what temporary works is about. You can certainly expect visits from the HSE in respect of this. So for project managers, you need to ensure that you have got a temporary works coordinator appointed for your site and that there is a temporary works file containing the basic information of what the temporary works are going to be, a brief description of them, together with the relevant design briefs and the detailed design and checking calculations and the final output drawings. The next item on the agenda, following on from the temporary works coordinator, is temporary works designs themselves. You will find in the briefing pack that there is a series of 3 pages of notes that I wrote in November 2010, which are there to help people on compiling correct and meaningful design briefs for temporary works. The The danger with temporary works is that they do not get the same level of respect, if you like, in terms of design and construction as the permanent works. But they need to have that, and hence there needs to be a proper design brief. The network rail requirements have slightly changed in the last year. As I've previously advised you, Form C is now no longer used. However, there is a similar process of design and checking required. The current standard 003 can use two forms for, it can use three forms for temporary works designs. It can use a form F1, which is the approval in principle. It can use a form F2, which is the statement of design intent. And it can use a form 3, which is the statement of design and checking, or design and check certificate. I would expect that the AIP, the Form 1, would not be used for anything other than very complex temporary works, or temporary works that have got quite a long and complicated staging attached to them. So in normal course of events, I would expect that we would have to produce Form 2, the statement of design intent, which will outline what the temporary works are and how we're going to go about designing and analysing them, and the Form 3, which will be the certificate of designing and checking. But as I've advised before, please discuss that on a project by project basis with the DPE and his team to find out how they want to handle it. As far as Spencers are concerned, any temporary works that we do put into use must have a certificate of design and checking. So even though it may not be a specific requirement on a contract to provide the Network Rail Form 2 and Form 3, we should always have a certificate of design and checking. So the suggestions that I make in this short document is that temporary works design submissions must include the following elements: the design statement, so that will be now Form 2, a designer's risk assessment. Please bear in mind that temporary works design under CDM 2007 is no different from permanent works design, and hence designers' risk assessments need to accompany those designs. And I especially, where staging requirements are quite specific, I would expect that to be covered in the designer's risk assessment. We also need an IDC certificate. The common problem that we can get with temporary works, especially on platforms, is that we affect signal sighting. We affect things called train ready to start buttons, which are which the platform staff need to have access to be able to dispatch the trains correctly. We may well obscure CCTV cameras. We may also be in close proximity to OLE, so we will need clearance for that, and certainly bonding. So these issues need to be covered with an IDC certificate. And again, it might be worth involving the CEM for the project with his knowledge about temporary works and what issues he may see in terms of the IDC check. Calculations are required, drawings, and sequence drawing or staging drawings, which will be applicable, especially with cofferdams, sheet pile excavations. It's very important that we strictly stick with the excavation and propping sequence that has been shown. Also in the design submission, there should be supporting information on manufacturer's product data, typically section sizes, mechanical properties of whaling components, RMD soldiers, and the like. Ground information investigation, sorry, ground investigation information should be included, because that will show what soil parameters have been selected by the designer, and they probably need to be checked at some stage during the construction of the temporary works. The brief is the next thing to be produced. The key elements there are to understand if the temporary works are going to be in place longer than 6 months, then they follow the route of a permanent design. Fortunately, the recent change to 003 has made that very clear, and hence the design and check process could be elevated by the DPE. So what information do you need to include in the design brief? Well, duration of the loading, the live loads to be supported, soils information, or a statement requiring that additional information is required, staging requirements, so that if you are having to do the work in a certain sequence to suit the construction, then that needs to be clearly stated in the design brief, so that the designers can take cognizance of it. Any access requirements for the public, a list of potential interfaces with the other railway engineering disciplines. This is obviously a precursor to the IDC, but it will hopefully stimulate people to think about these issues. Timescales for the production and the acceptance of the design, and again, gentlemen, these do need to be realistic. Please do not expect designers to produce designs very, very quickly and Network Rail to review them in 2 or 3 days. They need to be properly thought through and proper time given for checking and excuse me, acceptance by Network Rail. It's also a good idea to, within the design brief, to nominate a single source for communications. This may be the design coordinator appointed within the procurement team. It may be a nominee appointed by the project manager who's on site, but there does need to be one single source of contact for dealing with any queries, progressing the design, sorting out the buildability, that sort of thing. There needs to be one person nominated for that. So following the issuing of a brief, the next thing that needs to happen is the process of design development. It's very important that the project manager, the temporary works coordinator, the design coordinator get together and look at the buildability of what the designer is producing. If there is a process to be gone through where design ideas are reviewed and rejected, then it's a good idea to record this, so that when a design is finalised and presented to Network Rail for acceptance, that they can see that other ideas for temporary works have been explored. I have suggested that this document is presented to the Spencer senior manager on the project. When I wrote these notes, I called that person the senior contract manager. That person is now probably the operations director, so he is aware of what is going to happen in terms of temporary works, that there's been a proper process gone through, and that the final design is fully endorsed by the site team. So moving on from the design development, that will naturally bring you into the checking. That's covered by the category of checking required. Again, with all checking, there needs to be a consistent and thorough approach to it, and there needs to be evidence, hard evidence of the design, of the way the design has been checked. This will take the forms of notes, red pen drawings, etc. This information is not necessarily required to go with the submission, but it is required for internal audit, so that whoever has signed the design check certificate has got some other information to support his view that the design is satisfactory. And then finally we come into the area of change control. It's likely that the design will have to be modified. Things on site do seem to change. Things don't quite fit. We find different circumstances in the ground. All these changes are to be treated in exactly the same way as permanent works, i.e. the designer is to be contacted, a solution to the problem is to be agreed, that solution is then to be documented, and finally communication is to be made with Network Rail to say that a design change is necessary and this is what it entails. Again, this really is the job for the combination of the temporary works coordinator to make sure the process is followed, but for the CRE for construction to formally notify Network Rail of the changes. It's certainly possible that the CRE for construction can also be the temporary works coordinator. It's also possible that during the time taken to produce the design, things have changed on site. There may be new circumstances which have to be considered, which require a fairly major design change. Again, this has to be tackled using the principles I've outlined and formally recorded. It's a good idea to get AFC drawings issued by the CEM as well. Again, so these notes are available in the briefing pack. They are also available in the CEM section within SOS, and that is in the general section under Check.